When you get ball bearings in your pivot and you see sort of how that works compared to any other knife you've tried, it's just a night and day thing. It's like all of a sudden electricity was invented, and what do we need candles for anymore? That's kind of the sense you get. You are drooling right now over the beautiful Ikoma designed fossil knives from CRKT. There's the small one right there, and that is the large one with titanium coating and those extremely cool VEF serrations. Very functional and very aesthetically pleasing. Yeah, you are drooling because they are gorgeous knives. Really, really gorgeous. I mean, look at the detail here, the sculpting. Sculpting in that handle, the sculpting in the overlay G10 over that liner, sort of a frame lock almost. It's somewhere between a frame lock and a liner lock because it does have sort of an outer handle, but it doesn't really do much structurally, so I don't know what you would call it. However, I don't care. It's just very, very cool. That is the outer handle scale there is G10, although it looks almost like a walnut, like a sculpted, carved walnut, doesn't it? Really cool. It's just layered G10, layered colors there. And gosh, love it. Absolutely love it. Beautiful knives, as I said. Man, Ikoma really knows what he's doing. Flavio Ikoma really knows what he's doing in sculpting and in designing these custom knives. And I think CRKT's reproduction of his custom knife with the fossil here is just outstanding, out of this world cool. Very well done. Super cool. We're going to talk about, well, we may touch on aesthetics some more. It's going to be hard not to. But I'm also going to talk about performance, how they do as everyday carry knives, how they do in their cutting tasks, and we'll show you some testing footage of some of that, and any other points that I find are relevant. All right, also, but I want to touch on one last thing before we go forward. These knives were provided to me by CRKT for the purposes of testing and review. This one right here was not tested. It is part of the review right now to let you know that it's going to be yours soon. It's going to be part of your collection. And look down in the description to understand how you can win this knife, this large Ikoma fossil. Yeah, it's beautiful, isn't it? And it can be all yours, untouched, unused completely. Yeah, I want to give it to you. So does CRKT. So tell them thanks. And again, like I said, read the description down there to see how you can win it. But moving on to the review, let's talk about this knife. Let's talk about how it performed. And let's show you some of that footage. So like most knives that I test for the purposes of EDC, there are three things that I like to show some footage of it cutting to give you some sense of how it will perform for general EDC tasks. So cutting some paper, slicing through some paper. You want to get a sense for what kind of a fine edge this knife has. And what's the material? 8CR13 MOV is what it is, which takes a very nice fine edge. I've got lots of experience with that steel. You know, it does lose the edge like any other knife does, any other steel does, but a little bit faster than some of the more premium steels, of course, because it is kind of a budget steel, Chinese-made steel. But it's very, very acceptable as far as an EDC steel is concerned. No issues with it, especially at the price point of these two knives. And given the aesthetics, given the obvious amount of work that goes into these, the price point is absolutely perfect at around 45 to 60, somewhere in there, depending on whether you get the large one or the small one. Moving on to cardboard, it also did very, very nicely. Slipped through that pretty well. Like any other knife, it'll start to hang up as it gets a little bit hot, get some friction going on. Yeah, this steel will do it. Almost any other steel will do it. Some knives that are coated and have a little added lubricity will slip through that a lot better. And that might have been the case with this titanium one. I didn't test it, obviously, because I wanted to preserve it. But it possibly would have done a little better in that aspect. Now, moving on to some wood, which I also like to test, not necessarily to see how well the knife cuts wood. I know it's going to cut wood, but how is it in hand when I'm bearing down on it? How does my hand feel afterwards? How does my thumb feel if it's digging into that jimping on the top, which is actually, it's fine jimping, but it is fairly sharp, and it will lock your thumb in pretty well. So how did that knife perform in cutting through some wood, and how did I feel about it as far as ergonomics are concerned? Well, it did fairly well. For its size, I feel like the small Ikoma fossil here did pretty nicely. I was definitely satisfied with it. Got some fatigue, obviously, in pushing down and bearing down on that handle. You'll find the hot spots, and that happens pretty quickly. But yeah, it performed really well. And if you add a task like that to your EDC regimen from time to time, you'll be fine. If you do that kind of stuff all day long, not necessarily what the knife you want. You want definitely something that's going to be having a much more contoured handle, not something that's designed with a lot of aesthetics in mind, but more simply ergonomics. All right, otherwise, just great performance from it. And I did EDC this knife for 2 or 3 weeks, getting a good feel for, you know, how it felt in pocket, how I enjoyed carrying it, how I enjoyed using it for everyday tasks. And it's a joy to carry and use. I can tell you that for certain. One of the things I absolutely love about the Ikoma fossil is the bearing system, the Ikoma Korth bearing system. It's difficult to show. You can't really get a good look at it. But down in there, rather than washers of some sort, we have ball bearings. So this knife is ridiculously smooth. There's pretty much no comparison to almost any other system, any other pivot system. When you get ball bearings in your pivot and you see sort of how that works compared to any other knife you've tried, it's just a night and day thing. It's like all of a sudden electricity was invented, and what do we need candles for anymore? That's kind of the sense you get. It's the future. That's my feeling. But it's great. It's really, really smooth and so enjoyable to play with. So enjoyable to play with. I've had experience with that Ikoma Korth bearing system, not just on the fossil here, but also, of course, on the Ripple, the original version of the Ripple, as well as other versions of it. And man, I mean, I fell in love with it instantly. Just how smooth it was, and also the lockup it affords. It's ridiculous how good the lockup can be. Side to side is what I'm talking about mainly. You get the ultimate in smoothness, but you also have the best lockup you can imagine. Just awesome. Just awesome, awesome stuff. The Foresight there by Ken Onion. Also featuring that IKBS bearing system. Incredibly smooth, incredibly tight lockup. Just love it. Just love it. So anytime CRKT or anybody else releases a knife that's got bearings for that pivot, I'm interested and I want to know more about it. I want to get my hands on it and try it usually. So the Ikoma fossil, man, just for the bearing system that's in that pivot, oh man, definitely worth it. Definitely one I would recommend trying out, getting a hold of, and playing with, if not buying and making a part of your everyday carry system. Fantastic knife for that reason. Good blade shape as well. It's got a little bit of a recurve to it happening right here, down there as you can see. However, it's not so dramatic that it makes it difficult to resharpen. I would say that you can get virtually all of that edge resharpened. Not necessarily all of it, but almost all of it. It is hollow ground, as you can tell by the way the light reflects off of it. I haven't found that to be an issue. I enjoy hollow grind. I enjoy flat grinds. It comes down to slight differences in utility, but they both work great. And again, just love the blade shape. Love this big cutout right here, which does allow you to get your thumb in there and deploy like so. Of course, the flipper has got some jimping on it, making it possible for a very fast, very fluid opening. And gosh, it feels like it's spring assisted, although it definitely is not. The sculpting, I think I mentioned before, is just blows me away. So well done for the price. I mean, to get this kind of attention to detail, this kind of aesthetics for that price, it's almost a no-brainer. You got a little bit of not sharp jimping back here, some texturing I would really call it. Give you a little bit of a lock up there on your pinky and on your palm. And you've got the same thing, of course, virtually everything I'm talking about in the small version is reflected here in the large one, and it's identical, just scaled up. Pocket clip, of course, looks very cool. I like how it's kind of raised up like that on these two little pillars. You don't see that very often, and makes for a very interesting touch, very interesting aesthetic touch, and just kind of a very functional system as well. And you can tell there's some slight differences, obviously. The pocket clip on the large, or on this titanium large version, obviously is coated in titanium nitride, I'd say that is. And yeah, both of them look very, very cool, very functional, but also very cool looking. A little bit of cutouts here in the handles or scales, whatever you want to call them, in the frame. Again, just giving you a ton of aesthetics to just really, really satisfy your beauty sweet tooth. That doesn't make much sense, but I think you get what I'm saying. This one is slightly off-centered, but you know that can happen with virtually any knife, so it doesn't make me too upset. But the one you're going to win here, perfectly centered and perfectly smooth, just as the small one is. Again, guys, look down in the description to see how you can win this large Ikoma fossil from CRKT. Thanks to CRKT, and thanks to all of you for watching. I'm the Late Boy Scout. I hope you enjoyed this review. We'll see you guys later. That spring takes over, fires it out real fast. It's just a really cool mechanism. I'm just so interested and just, fascinated by what different companies come up with. And I think this is one of the most elegant ones I've seen so far.